Welcome to the Influential Personal Brand Podcast. This is the place where we help mission-driven messengers just like you learn how to build and monetize your personal brand. My name is Rory Vaden, and I'm the co-founder of Brand Builders Group, a Hall of Fame speaker, and New York Times bestselling author. And this show is to help experts learn how to become more wealthy and well-known. I know you're going to love it. Thanks for being here. Let's get started.
Hey, y'all. Welcome to the Influential Personal Brand Podcast. I am genuinely so excited to introduce you to my good friend, longtime friend, actually been working with Lee as a vendor and a client for over 10 years. And this is going to be one of those episodes that is just worth a listen. So let me give you a quick high-level introduction of who Lee Pepper is, and then we're going to dive right in. Lee Pepper is a marketing and tech leader who has built high-performing teams that drive massive growth through conversions. And I think that's an important part of this conversation. This is about marketing for conversions. He's helped lead Foundations Recovery Network to a $350 million acquisition and built the teams at Specialty Care, which later sold for $1 billion, that's with a B, $1 billion through marketing strategies. As a former Army officer and campaign staffer for Ross Perot in his presidential campaign, Lee now consults in healthcare and mentors veterans in recovery. This is a true marketing expert sharing real marketing strategies. So please welcome Lee Pepper. I am so excited to have you on the show today. And here's what I would share with everyone listening. As you guys know, there's a lot of new friends that we have on the show. That's not today. Lee is a genuine personal friend. We go back now over 10 years. Can you believe that?
It's gone by so quickly.
When we first met, your kids were still in like elementary school, and now you have a soon-to-be college graduate. Like crazy. So I'm so excited to have you on the show. And one of the reasons for everyone listening why I wanted to have Lee on the show today is I just think he brings a really unique perspective to the importance of marketing and executive leadership and innovation that you just don't hear a lot in typical digital marketing strategies on the web today. So this is a true marketing expert. And I can say that because I watched him behind the scenes at work. And if I don't recall, like you helped 60X your former company before it went.
Yeah, at Foundation Recovery Network, our first private equity play, we returned 60 times.
That's insane. And for all of you who are listening, I met Lee because in my former life, when I was in sales consulting, I was hired by the company that he was running all the marketing for to come in and help with sales strategy. And I'm sitting in these call centers and they're yielding 20, 30, 40,000 calls a month from his marketing strategies. And my job was to help convert those into sales. But just sit there for a second and go, what would your business look like if you had 10,000 inbound calls a month? Crazy. It's wild. So we're going to talk a lot about marketing, but also what marketing looks like in terms of innovation and on the leadership team, which is what I'm really excited about. But before we get into that, I want to help our audience get to know you just a little bit. And you have a varied background, anything from military to presidential campaigns to, private equity funded exits. But let's start way back in the military. And you were in the Army.
Yes.
So your new book has a lot to do with some things that you learned in the military, in the Army, and how you can apply that to leadership and marketing. I would like to know what those are.
Right, and I hope, thank you so much for the kind introduction, AJ. I think that for me, when you're first enlisting, I enlisted in the Army when I was a sophomore in college, and I was a 76 Yankee unit supply clerk. So you go to basic training, and one of the things that you learn, you obviously learn how to shoot, right? But nobody wins any battles just because they know how to shoot. Like there has to be a strategy. And that is where I took that. Then when I went to officer candidate school and got commissioned as an officer, went to armor school at Fort Knox. That's where then when I transitioned into my corporate career, especially in marketing, a lot of people want to get stuck on the how to shoot, on the tactics. And we're really lacking is the strategy. So that's what I try to approach in my book, Never Outmatched, is to give some voice to here are the strategies which are pretty accessible to most people, even if they don't have not served in the military. They're mental models. Like they're very accessible. And if you will focus on creating the strategy, then you will decide the tactics that will make you successful. If you do it in the inverse, you're constantly switching tactics and you're never getting that 60 times return that everybody wants.
Okay, because I want to sit on this for a second because we at Brand Builders Group are a personal brand strategy
Yes.
firm. And we know one of the biggest objections we get as, you know, potential new customers get on calls with us is they're like, yeah. But when do we get to do the fun stuff? Right? When do we get to launch the website? When do we get to make the pretty designs? When do we get to? And it's like, I don't know. Depends on the strategic approach you're taking. So this is something we hear all the time because we're big believers in, like, if you don't have a good blueprint, then you don't know how to build. Why is it that so many people skip the strategy?
I think you hit the nail on the head when you said people want to get to the fun stuff. You know, when I retired from the Meadows a few years ago, I didn't necessarily mean to get in consulting, but people realized that I was now retired, semi-retired, not really retired, I guess.
Pretend retired.
Yeah, they started reaching out and calling, a lot of word of mouth. And every single one of my clients, it was always the same thing. We got started doing this one thing, this one tactic, and it's not working. And we have to kind of reverse it and go, let's start high, kind of like what you guys do with brand builders, which I love being connected with you all. But I think it's because people, especially when you're running a business, and a lot of times when my phone rings, it's because there's a major problem. Like they've tried everything else, it's not working. And there's pressure for results. And so people will overpromise, oh, I can come in and I can help produce this many website visits, this much traffic, or I can produce this many phone calls. But yet we're still missing out on the whole strategy part, which is really, there's a lot of temporary things you can do, but it's not long lasting. Whereas the way you approach it, the way I approach it, it's long term, it's long lasting.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of what I hear you saying is like the strategy helps prepare for the long run versus a lot of like the quick tactics. It might work temporarily, but like with any fad, it's kind of fade
Right.
away if you don't know what to do next.
In the military, you can't have these fads,
Yeah.
or else you will get overrun. And there's people's lives at stake. And so it's not that necessarily in our corporate businesses that lives are at stake, though a lot of times in healthcare there are. But we have to start with the overall strategy, and then you can maneuver, you can change tactics. You know, things will change within there, but you have to have this overarching strategy.
So, when it comes to marketing strategy, like if there were some universal principles or some universal concepts, even if they're just mindset shifts, what would you say to you are like the core truths?
Here's the first one that I always bring up. It's this notion of commander's intent. And what commander's intent is, does your team, do they understand what the board and what management actually wants? Like, you need to give that commander's intent. And then each of your team leads are going to take from that their own personal commander's intent, and they need to give that to their teams. And what happens a lot of times, we want innovation, but we can't just command innovation. We have to set up the culture that's going to allow your team the freedom of movement, good military term, right? So that you can innovate. But what ends up happening a lot of times, we end up being very top down, whereas innovation and creativity is bottom up. And in the military, there are tons of examples, I give them in my book, where you would have lost a battle unless you allowed your soldiers to have that creative freedom of movement. So instead of saying, stay right here in this foxhole and defend it to the death, no, they're told, hey, here's your strategy. You have commander's intent. You have freedom of movement. But a lot of times in our companies, we don't operate that way. We have this top-down mentality, and we wonder then why our teams are not innovative, because we haven't given them the freedom to be innovative. That is one of the things that when I first met you, AJ, was that I had just taken over the call center, our admissions team. And I knew from the beginning, no matter what we did in the marketing, no matter how we changed the lead source, the volume, our conversion rate wasn't changing. And so I wanted to be able to have the ability to change the conversion rate, even if it made it worse.
Yeah.
I wanted to understand that we were controlling. That's when I started asking questions like, who do we need to meet in this town? And that's how we got referred to you. So my team knew the commander's intent, and we had the freedom and to innovate, which we did.
Okay, so for so many companies that don't have that? Why not?
I think it's for a lot of small business owners, and I work with a lot of folks that are owner founders. There is this struggle that this is their baby,
Mm.
that this is their company, their brand, and they are afraid to even let go of anything. And so a lot of times when I'm consulting, the message is you spent the time to hopefully hire the right people and go through a good process. You have to entrust that they are hearing your commander's intent. And there are some strategies I talk about in the book. There's a thing called a talkback. And in the military, when we're giving orders, we ask for the talkback, repeat back what I just said. So I make sure that you understood what my intent really is, right? And a lot of times in the corporate world, we don't do that. Um, I had in my book, I talk a lot about George Patton, probably one of my favorite generals, because he was armor. And there's this lead from the front mentality. And I think you've been in enough companies, and you certainly remember the days at Foundations when you came into the Foundations office. I don't know if you remember where my desk was, but my desk was out in the middle.
Mhm.
Like we had a very open workspace. We had 30 staff members just in marketing, and I was right there in the middle. I had always known from the beginning of my military career that I wanted to be at the front lines, right? And there's a great example in my book how Patton used that same strategy to take over a failed American strategy in North Africa, and within 90 days, they had ousted Rommel from North Africa. So there's also this mentality you can't be stuck in your office, you can't be stuck leading from spreadsheets.
Mm.
You're going to have to be kind of on the front lines.
It's so interesting that you say that because only here recently, so Brand Builders Group is about to turn 7 years old this summer. And in the last like 4 or 5 months, I have taken back over the sales department. But for the last 7 years, ironically, it's kind of been led by other team members. And they've done a great job, but there were some things that were coming up where I'm like, I need to get back on the front lines. Something's not clicking, something's not working. And it has been so invigorating, so refreshing to be listening to the sales calls, remapping the sales talks. But like to what you're just saying, it's like how many people are willing to get back on the front lines and go, no, it's my job to get in there and be on the front lines and be accessible.
Absolutely. And AJ, this is one of the things that you all brought to Foundations was this notion of actively listening to phone calls. And that was something that was not being done. And we implemented that. And a lot of times when I come in to do an analysis or start working or coaching a CEO or a CMO, that's the first thing I'll ask, how many calls have you listened to this week? And it's every single time I haven't listened to calls.
Hmm.
And yet they feel like they have a marketing problem. That's why they've called me. But invariably, there's some mix. It's not just necessarily the marketing issue. It may be a conversion issue, and so you have to be able to take the time and not be afraid, right, to jump in. Because, like for me, I didn't have any expertise, right, in sales. Like I learned a lot from you all, but I wasn't afraid to listen in and learn. And so that's a lot of where you have to kind of put away some of your biases, and I write about this, in my book. There are a lot of cognitive biases that we all bring to the table and that we don't even realize are in our subconscious. So if you're a finance person, right, and I talk a lot about how, in the book, how you can start to communicate differently with your finance team and your accounting team, but there are cognitive biases that they have. Doesn't mean they're bad people, but they have these cognitive biases, and if you're not aware, you don't even know how to fashion, building out your KPIs or how to
Mm.
fashion how you communicate in an effective way.
That's interesting because I think a lot of times when you think about companies as they grow and scale, departments start to become siloed, right? And marketing does what marketing does, and sales does what sales does. And it's like, well, no, really, part of marketing's job is to provide leads for the sales team. And if they're not talking together, inevitably there's going to be some issues. So I'd like to hear from you, like, what is the role that marketing should play in driving enterprise value? Like in an ideal world, and you've had so much experience with being at the helm of not just marketing, but technology and information. But like, what is an ideal role for marketing to play in a company's growth?
I think that marketing has the ability, with the right person developing a strategy, to impact so many departments,
Mhm.
Amanda. One of the examples I use in the book is with human resources. We always say that, wow, I wish I could recruit better people,
Hmm.
and I wish our retention rates were better. But yet we never partner with the marketing team to see how that relates. And so I use this
Hmm.
example of force multiplication, how you can kind of create a budget to kind of take advantage of that. But there's so many opportunities where you can become kind of that you can relieve the pain that your other departments have.
Hmm.
So like in the HR example, marketing can really help with retention, keeping people like employed longer and being happier in their job versus just saying, hey, HR, that's your job, when HR doesn't necessarily have that experience. Same thing in accounting and finance. You can make accounting and finance's job a lot easier, right? If you're in partnership and connected with them. And now all of a sudden, instead of just being another department that they have to kind of, maintain and run reports for, they see you as really driving value. It's just understanding what is important to them, if that makes sense.
So I would love to hear just a couple of minutes. How do you do that? Right? Because in theory, that's like, yes, our different departmental, teams are communicating and they're working together and they're collaborating and it's shared resources. And in reality, we know that often doesn't happen.
Right. Well, you said this word shared resources, and I kind of get tinged. So I think that there's a couple of things that how you get tight with them. One, you have to be part of their budget,
Mm.
and a lot of times companies are like, "Well, what?" At Foundations, we had a percentage of the alumni team budget went to marketing. A percentage of the HR budget went to market, so that we were responsible, right? That we were actually having meetings, and that they had skin in the game and we had skin in the game. So many companies don't budget that way. And I'm not suggesting you're giving like 50%, it can just be like 5%. But all of a sudden now you're giving your marketing team, right, something that they can maybe hire somebody extra to kind of help support. A lot of times we say, oh, it's going to be a shared resource. Well, if there's
Hmm.
not actual hard dollars to it, you're not going to get their attention. The second thing is, are the goals matching? And I use an example in my book where there was there was a time when finance and marketing, like our bonus goals, were not aligned, and so all of a sudden it creates a lot of headache. So you have to make sure, from a leadership perspective, that each of the department's goals are aligned and supportive of each other. Because if there's any type of contradiction or incongruency, now you're going to have infighting, which is what a lot of times you see in companies when they're like, "Well, marketing's not helping me," or, "Well, maybe you didn't budget, and maybe you also didn't align your actual bonus goals together."
Interesting. So if you were to look at a company, I know this is a broad
Mm.
statement here. If you look at like allocation of resources, human capital, dollars and cents, is there like a best practice of what should go to marketing versus other departments?
Well, in my experience in behavioral health, we always tried to keep our marketing budget 10% of net revenue.
Mm.
So that was, but some companies can afford more, and some companies maybe they have less margin, so it has to be less. But I think it shouldn't be a secret.
Mm.
Like, you should develop what is your number going to be, and it shouldn't be a secret.
Mm.
And then when it comes to other departments, they have to understand the value and how you can solve some of their problems. So like in the HR situation, I think, if you establish a starting point, so you might go with something very small like 5%. And if they know that 5% of their budget, now they're going to start wanting to know, like, what are you doing for it? Instead of just this, oh, shared resources, and maybe I'll get something, maybe I won't. No, now they're a customer of market, right? And I think that all of a sudden you start to get some synergy there. Because from the marketing perspective, I want to be well connected to HR, because I'm going to get some value from maybe website traffic, or outbound links, coming into my website from stuff they're doing. Like, there's some benefit there too. And that's where in my book, I talk a lot about this idea of force multiplication.
Yeah, I love that. And that is for sure the first I have heard about this whole concept of make sure all the other departments are almost customers of marketing
Absolutely.
and this vested
They can't be
interest.
free. Marketing's not doing free work.
That's right. That's good.
Yeah.
I mean, and that really does force some more of that communication and collaboration and transparency in the budget.
Yeah. I mean, so many times I've been at some of my customers, and they'll be like, oh, well, HR's doing, they decided to start experimenting with TikTok or Reels. And you wonder why they're terrible, because they didn't like partner with somebody in marketing, kind of maybe help. And maybe marketing would love to, but marketing's also busy driving revenue.
That's right.
So why would you want to take them away? So you have to
Hmm.
give them some allocation. And now all of a sudden you're going to see amazing things that can happen.
Okay, so you just brought up something that leads me to a question that I have. around, maybe they're experimenting in TikTok or
Mm.
Reels or all these other things. So there is a lot of companies that you can just tell there is not a strategy in place. They're just dabbling, right? And with the amount of data and the amount of platforms that are available now, like what would you say are some key tips or key strategies to make sure that you win at marketing? And also, what have you seen of why companies are failing at marketing?
Wow. Well, there's a lot in that question, AJ. But what I would say is that you have to forget these vanity metrics,
Mm.
and that's what I see a lot. You have to make sure you're communicating not only
Wait, be
to
clear. Like, tell everyone what's a vanity metric in your world.
well, a vanity metric might be in the example of YouTube. It might be subscribers.
Mm-hmm.
It might be even views. So that to me is a vanity metric. Whereas a real metric is I want to see the number of comments on a video. Because if you're getting comments, that's real people that have watched your video that are giving you feedback. Whereas with views or with subscribers, could just be bots that were bought,
Mm-hmm.
could be poor traffic. So for me, I go straight to the comments. Same thing when it comes to site visits on your website. I mean, it's a number you look at, but it's a vanity metric, right? What really is important is the conversions. How many phone calls did I get? Or if you're doing lead forms or live chat, that's where it's really is important. I've had a lot of times where I'll come in and I'll coach a CMO and work with the agency to kind of help shift that narrative.
Okay, so real quick for everyone who's listening, because I think this is a really big deal because at least in our world, in the personal brand space, there's a lot of focus on vanity metrics.
Yeah.
A lot. And I think some of that is because you get tempted by, oh, I want to blow up. Oh, I want to go viral. Oh, I want to do this because everyone else is. And at the end of the day, we all know that doesn't necessarily mean you have any dollars in your banking account. We say a lot of times people are Twitter rich and dollar poor, right? Those are the vanity metrics.
Right.
So, in terms of the real metrics, can we just do like a quick list? You said comments, so some engagement, email subscribers. Would that
Right.
be one? Like,
Yes.
what are some other real metrics people should be looking at?
Yeah, I think well, like when I'm thinking about like what we were just talking about off camera about, our conversions off our website for books. I mean, you want to get to that number. And so there's the key is that most agencies, they're going to tell you they can't do that because well, they don't have insight into your back end,
Hmm.
right? Well, yeah, you can get them insight. Like you can get them access to your call tracker. You can get them access to actually what converted, and you kind of start to remove that. And I think that we've fallen into this vanity metric situation because we didn't have that integration. But the integration is possible, and even if you have to use something as fancy as Microsoft Excel, it is possible, right, to track this and get the information back. Um, a similar one is when you look at say Facebook and Instagram, it's likes. I mean, that you really got to drill down like who is liking and how are you getting these likes. Again, I like to get back to the actual um, comments and also the clicks into your website. Like that might be something that's not quite as vanity. You can drive all this traffic, but did somebody actually click? And now you've got something to work with. You can say, well, I either had a conversion problem
Mm-hmm.
on my social channels or on my website, which that could be valid.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you don't have the right CTAs and you can fix that. Or you've got a problem with the kind of traffic you're getting. So where are you sourcing your traffic? Where you trying to get your traffic from? And you might find, oh, well, I didn't realize that I was paying the agency to run these paid, ads, and they're terrible.
Yeah.
But now you've got something to work with. But it's your responsibility. You have to kind of do the research, and it's not that complicated
Mm.
because we're not talking about really super complicated theoretical things here, right? You're saying, how many phone calls did I get? How many people clicked on that ad? And then how many bought something? I mean, it's not
Yeah.
that complicated.
That's good. Okay. Sorry, I wanted to hit through because
Yeah.
that's a constant, never-ending source of conversation in the Brand Builders Group community of
Right.
putting the attention, quite honestly, on the wrong thing and having the right things, the real things
Yeah.
that matter, I think is a big deal.
And AJ, I don't know if you remember me saying this, but with most of the behavioral health clients that I coach and support, they're surprised when they're always talking about, well, I need more phone calls. I need more phone calls. And I'm like, do you?
Mm-hmm.
Because what I'm trying to do in working with an admissions team, I'm trying to get one phone call, right, that converts to one assessment then that assessment converts to one admission. I'm not looking for 500 phone calls.
Yeah.
But what does that mean? So they're all, and usually when I explain it that way, they're like, yes, I want less noise. I want better quality.
That's right.
That's where the vanity metrics miss out sometimes. You know, and
More is not always better.
yeah, more is not always better. I want quality. Listen, we only have so many hours in the day, right? So like for me with, especially, with my coaching and consulting clients, I can't take 10 prospecting calls a day. I mean,
That would be all you do.
I mean, it's all I would do. I need the one, right?
That's good. Okay. So back to this, what are some of the, reasons why marketing fails? And then how do you, like, can you spot a company and go, they have a great marketing team, they have great marketing, and also they don't?
Well, yes, and the thing is, I think about my clients. I've got a dear client who's been with me for a long, long time, and when I first got to their location, I'm not gonna name. I'm gonna protect but when I first
Protect the innocent here.
when I got there, I was watching what they were trying to do on TikTok and Instagram, and they thought that they were doing it right because they were just busy. And I use an example in my book about this, how if you're not careful, you're gonna look busy, you're gonna be in your uniform and all the pageantry, and then all of a sudden you're gonna get completely wiped out, by somebody that has done some research and is gonna wipe you out. And so that was what's happened with this client. It's like they had just said to their team, we need reels, we need TikTok, and that was where they left it, and like nobody thought to maybe get some coaching, have a strategy, right? Instead of just doing the tactical part, which is and that's the danger of our technology today, in a sense that we do make it very easy.
Yeah.
And it becomes very accessible, but it's almost like a gun in the wrong hands. It can do bad things. So can all these social media tools we have. Like in the wrong hands, they can do some bad things.
I mean, there's a lot of noise.
Yeah.
So how do you know, and on a marketing, when you think about like strategic marketing plan, how do you know what the right thing to do is with so much noise? How do you know?
To me, what I challenge each of my clients and the folks that I coach is that it has to be documented. And so I think that when you go through that, and documentation doesn't mean bureaucracy. It doesn't mean that it takes months to create this, but I challenge them to put it down in writing, right? And so we do things like, if we're going to do social media, okay, then we're going to grab and do screenshots of the social media that we're going after, right? So I want to see the style guide. I want to see the types of messaging, because there's tons of ways to go there. But we're going to document what we're doing. Same thing with our website, our SEO content. And it's going to be documented even in a Word doc, right? I mean, it can be in something like Evernote or Notion too, but we're going to document it. And then each of the team members are going to have access to this, so everybody knows what everybody is doing. Even your HR department, your accounting department, your C-suite, it needs to be readable and accessible. Now all of a sudden, now you've got buy-in, and now you start to overcome these cognitive biases, because now you're not going to fall to FOMO. Because that's a lot of times where I'll go somewhere, they'll be, oh, well, this treatment center over here is doing this. Or, you know what, our CFO, they just said their son is blowing up on TikTok. Well, okay. Or I just Googled myself, like another problem that can happen. And it's like, and you fall victim when you have not documented what you're doing, and then maintain that documentation as a living, breathing. And that's where the innovation and the experimentation comes in. We want to experiment, right? So, the companies that are doing well now, it's not because they just started TikTok today.
Sure.
They might have been dabbling in it and investigating
process.
it last year. And that's the thing. You always want to have some percentage of your budget where you're willing to experiment and learn, instead of getting involved 2 or 3 years when it's too late.
I think that's really good. The documentation part, I think, is a huge part, because so many of us are just going out and doing the new thing, doing the next thing, and not even paying attention to the old thing.
Yeah.
Right. And it's always what's new. And what's isn't necessarily always what's better.
And if you remember, AJ, there were 2 things that really helped us sell a couple of the companies that I've been involved with. One was, you remember all the screens we had?
Oh, yeah.
At one point we had 20.
It's still Rory's vision to have TVs with marketing data everywhere.
We had I think we were up to 20 TVs, monitors that were reporting in real time different aspects.
I mean,
of
that's
our
a
marketing.
true marketing war room.
It was a war room, absolutely. And that was one of the things that really helped us sell our businesses, because people that were acquiring us and investing in us, they knew that we knew. And it's not,
That's good.
we were understanding trends, and we were able to react because we were proactive, in our approach. Like, we were monitoring, we knew what was happening. So if Google made an algorithm change, we knew it. We didn't find out about it 3 months later.
I think that's a huge misconception that people have about marketing
Mm,
is how data driven
yeah,
really good marketers
yeah,
are.
yeah.
So, I mean, I know that you're super data driven and
Absolutely, because I've been fortunate that I'm married. My wife Jennifer is an artist, and a lot of art can be very subjective, like
mm,
how people view it. And so I've always been sensitive to that. And I know enough that as a CMO, that when somebody brings me something and they'll ask me an open-ended question about, well, what do you think about this ad? Okay, I've got cognitive biases. I've got subjective biases, but that doesn't mean that it won't work. So that's why you have to
mhm.
look at the data. I want it to be objective, not subjective. And that's why, if you are tracking some data, even just some basic data points, I want the data to be the bad guy instead of, well, lead in like my ad, right? And there's, and again, companies can decide. It doesn't have to be super complicated. You're going to have two or three basic data points that you want to review, and then all of a sudden now your team is focused on reviewing that, instead of, oh, well, Susie didn't like that shade of green. I mean, it gets like that.
Oh, I know. I think somewhere along the lines, a lot of people, and if this is you listening, I'm not shaming you, but somewhere along the lines, a lot of people have gotten branding confused with marketing.
Yes.
And marketing is not fonts, typography,
Right.
iconography, color palettes. That's not marketing.
Yeah.
That's branding.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think a lot of people get confused with us because we're a personal branding firm and they're like, when do we get to make my visual identity?
Right.
And I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you even know what you're selling?
Right.
Do you even know what you want to be known
Right.
for? They're like, no. But when do I get to get my visual identity? So have you seen that too in like big companies?
Oh, it's all the time when I go somewhere, and they'll say they're creating a new program, and they'll use that term brand,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll be like, well, we need to start branding. And for me, I'm like, I don't know what you mean. Oh, well, we need to run billboards. Okay. Billboards are appropriate in certain circumstances, but I need to understand, like, what is your overall goal, so we can create the strategy first. We don't just go run, I'm opening up a new location, so I got to run a billboard and just put our logo up there. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where it gets into the branding, the marketing, and people have to understand that. And I think for most people, like, we're small business owners, or we're creating these businesses. We're not Coca-Cola,
That's right.
and that's where we are establishing ourselves, and that's where we have to be data driven, because we only have so much time, and we don't have so many dollars, and so we have to be very strategic in how we spend those, especially when a lot of it's our money.
Mm-hmm. That's good. All right, y'all. I have a few last questions for Lee, but before we run out of time, I want to encourage you if you guys have been listening to this, this is barely scratching the surface. This is the tip of the iceberg of all of the conversation that Lee lays out in such a strategic way in his new book. So I just want to give everyone an opportunity. His book comes out in early fall.
September 2nd.
September 2nd. So if you go to neveroutmatched.com, you can go and pick up your pre-order copy right now before it sells out. All right. So that's, I'm putting that out there
Thank
into the
you.
world. Neveroutmatched.com. Go now, pre-order your copy. It'll be hitting bookstores on September 2nd. And I'm a huge advocate. I wrote an endorsement for the book because I have been a part of the living legacy that you've created through all of this marketing work you've done with these companies. I've seen it firsthand. So highly, highly, highly recommend and endorse it. I will make sure our marketing team reads it. But all right, I have 3 last questions for you.
Yes.
And this is a little bit of rapid fire. And I think what I love about this conversation is it's not just about marketing. It's about marketing and leadership and company collaboration. And I love that. So best leadership lesson that you learned while in the Army?
Boy, there's so many. I think one of the first lessons I learned, and this is very appropriate for admissions teams, that I coach a lot, and that is when I first arrived at Fort Knox, they set up video cameras. Now this is back before the internet when I was in, right? This is 1992, but they set up video cameras and they had us read our orders of the day in front of video cameras. Why were they doing that? Well, they wanted you to start to watch yourself
Huh.
and understand, were you putting your hands in your pocket? Were you saying ums and ahs? Because now you're giving orders. You're a young lieutenant. Nobody cares about you, but you're giving orders to grizzled old veterans. So you better have your stuff together. And so that was one of the first lessons that I learned at Fort Knox. And the Army was really ahead of its time in that, in listening and watching and giving that feedback.
Ooh, I love that. I actually just watched a video. Someone had sent it to me about how the Blue Angels practice before they go
I
in the
saw that
air.
same video. It's amazing.
And it's like it was amazing, their precision and accuracy and how well they knew how the other person was going to react, and they close their eyes and they visualize it, right? And but so much of that is because they've been watching each other and they've been practicing with each other, and it's so much of like, how do you become good at something? You practice.
Right.
And you watch yourself. Do you still watch yourself on video?
I haven't watched myself on video in a long time, though I guess I do because I've been on a lot of podcast interviews, so I have seen it. But I do listen to myself on phone calls.
Mm.
So I will say I do that. But, it's one of these things where I've tried to instill this in both my sons because my older son is graduating. He'll be graduating next year from Wofford. So he's going through the interview process, with internships. And we practiced. It's like it's not enough
Oh,
just to
that's
get,
good.
you have to practice with your team. So I'm always available to people I've worked with when they're going for job interviews. It's like, no, let's practice. Let me be the interviewer.
Oh,
And
that's
it
good.
just helps so much because sometimes we're afraid because, you have to be a little more vulnerable. And so, but once you can do that, now all of a sudden you're going in prepared, you've done it.
We were laughing because this is something that we encourage speakers to do, is to become a great speaker. It's like you've got to watch yourself on film, but we encourage you to watch yourself 4 different ways. You need to watch yourself normal. Then you need to turn your back to the camera so that you're just listening. Then we want you to watch it on mute, so you're paying attention to your body movement. But then we want you to watch it on fast forward because you pick up ticks. You pick up all these little weird nuances that you don't do. And somebody in the audience at one of our events said, well, why would you want to do that to yourself? Right? And we said, well, the audience had to sit through it. Shouldn't you have to? Right? And it's the same thing with what you're saying. It's like you're making all these people sit through phone calls with you and interviews with you. Like, shouldn't you take the time to know what they're experiencing to become better at it?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, I love that. Watch yourself on video, y'all. Most overlooked marketing metric.
Most overlooked marketing metric. I think I think we alluded to it earlier, was the YouTube comments. I think you'd be really hard to find somebody in an agency that would report that number to you. Again, because we always want to report subscribers, which can be bought, or be bots. We always want to report views.
Sure.
And it's like, okay, well, did they watch the whole thing or just 2 seconds of it? But comments, you'll see quickly, are those real people, and what is the. So I think comments is a big one. And then, of course, for a lot of my type of work, we're optimizing to the phone call. I have to have the phone call.
I would say for most people in our world, that's the same as well. It's like most people are making a soft offer for some sort of high ticket dollar offer, and it's all about call conversions. So that's not different in the personal brand world. One marketing book that you think every executive leader should read, other than Never Outmatched, because
Right.
definitely that. But outside of that,
Yeah. Well, what's funny is I think I mentioned this in the book. A book that I have by my bedside table is Caesar's Commentaries on the Gallic Wars. So it is a military book that was written, authored by Caesar. I have that, and my wife always laughs because I've got a 1895 translated edition that I read, and I don't read it every night, but it's probably it's not it's usually at least once a week I'm flipping through it. So that's where I continue to get inspiration for these military strategies that have stood the test of time.
wow.
And when you think about corporations, were first started in 1602 with the East India Trading Company, in Amsterdam. So a lot of times we get focused on just reviewing the last 400 years, but military strategies are thousands of years old. So the question is, what can you learn from the leadership, the innovation perspective of these military mental models, and then how do you apply them to your marketing. So
Fascinating.
that's what I'm constantly, and that's what I've written in the book. I mean, it's 12 chapters. There are 12 basic military strategies that I go over, and I find they're very accessible.
So I have a quick side question. Since you've been in the Army and you've been spent a lot of your years there, but also in presidential campaigns, how many new tactics, how many new strategies are there really?
Yeah, it's a lot less than you think
Yeah.
because again, we get stuck on the tactics.
Mm.
There's always going to be new things, coming on our plate, new ways for us to reach people. But at the end of the day, there are some really time tested mental models, military strategies, ways that you can reach an audience. That those are not things that are just being reinvented all the time or invented all the time.
And that should be hopeful and promising to all of us.
Yes, and I think that less than 1% of the U.S. population will serve in the military, and that's not a critique. That's just where we are in today's society. So I think a lot of these things, when I speak to people about some of these strategies, a lot of times they're like, "Wow, they're just not as accessible as they might have been even 100 years ago,
Hmm.
right before we had all this digital advancement." So I think what I've tried to do in this book is I've tried to like kind of like reintroduce some of these time honored strategies that really we should all be familiar with. This is not necessarily that I've just come up with all of a sudden these new
Hmm.
innovations. No, I'll talk a lot about Caesar and Hannibal. I'll use probably the most recent example I use is Norman Schwarzkopf and his use of the hammer and anvil in the first Gulf War. But I mean, a lot. I talk a lot about Joan of Arc, um, and so I'm really excited to bring some of these new ideas, and that's why I keep using this word mental model because sometimes military strategy might seem inaccessible, but I think there's a lot for people to grasp and think about how they're going to apply this strategy, all right, into their marketing before they start jumping into tactics.
Well, the truth is military strategy's been around a lot longer than marketing strategy, and there's some timeless pieces of information that we can pull from military into marketing and leadership in general. So, if you didn't hear me earlier, please check out Lee's new book, Never Outmatched. Go to neveroutmatched.com, grab a copy, get the pre-order, comes out, drops September 2nd. And Lee, thank you so
Thank
much
you,
for being
AJ.
on the show. This is so good. I can't wait for the book to come out. I can't wait for everyone to read it. And then one last quick question, and we'll wrap. What does influential mean to you?
Influential to me, I'm a big believer. It's not who you know; it's who knows you.
Mm.
And so I have always used that as one of my mantras. And so to have people know you, you have to help people. So I've always been very giving of my time and my advice, whether they take it or not. And so to me, I would consider myself influential, though I'm not sure you would count me as an influencer. But I feel like I have been very targeted and influential in a lot of people's lives. And I think that's the most important thing.
I love that. And I love what you said. It's not who knows you. It's not who you know, it's who knows you, but people know you because you help them.
Right.
That's the key part. I love
Absolutely.
that.
Absolutely.
So good.
Okay,
Y'all,
AJ.
stick around for the recap episode. It'll be coming up next, and we'll see you next time on the Influential Personal Brand.